Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Just after Thanksgiving, Ohio State Buckeye fans were ready to fire the coach, and the local government was trying to get flag planting banned. Now they're national champions. Ohio State finished a dominant postseason, and the Bears have found Caleb Williams Obi-Wan Kenobi.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
It wasn't that long ago that Ohio State was at rock bottom. Now they are national champions. They beat Notre Dame a 34-23, frankly, a beatdown. Barrett Sally there on the field. He is from Smothered and Covered podcast. And Barrett, this is quite the story of the last 6 weeks for Ohio State. What changed to your mind over the last few weeks? And they were the best postseason team from start to finish in this.
It was humble pie, right? The Michigan loss is the best thing that ever happened to them. And Ohio State fans are going to hate that because they want to beat their rival, as does everybody else. Like everybody does. But I think it's understandable if you lose by one on the road to an undefeated Oregon team that was the number one seed in the playoff.
Right.
No shame in that. But losing to Michigan, getting your teeth kicked in, that's a reminder, right? That's a wake-up call. That's like when my son goes out there and goes 0 for 5 in a baseball game and strikes out looking 5 times. It's like, you know what? You ain't that good, man. You ain't that good. You better get your crap together. And they did. And so, yeah, I mean, I think for really for Chip Kelly, and we talked to Chip Kelly about this a little bit, what happened in his mind, we talked about this 2 days ago with him, is that he was not prepared for a 16-game season. And there's no blueprint for this, right?
Right.
Being prepared for a 16-game season with college athletes, it has never been done before. And I think he got a little ahead of his skis in that Michigan game where he thought his team could handle it. They were worn down, and he didn't realize it until it was too late. That allowed him to hit the reset button, allowed them to hit the reset button. And, they, to Ryan Day's credit, I know he takes a lot of heat, but he pushed all the right buttons, and it was impressive.
Yeah, the Chip Kelly redemption arc is really been something to watch here, and it will probably get lost to some degree in all of this, in all of the criticisms. Ryan Day took on the critics head on after the game, dropped Lou Holtz, and it is interesting that Ohio State, a blue blood of blue bloods, could act like nobody believes in us, but it did seem like they were playing that way, that they leaned into that. And you talk about the $21 million being spent on this team. We don't care. We're just here to win now.
Right. Yeah. And you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of Georgia in 2021, which felt like a freight train, right? Yeah. It reminds me of LSU in 2019, where, you started to, you saw the tracks rolling downhill. LSU obviously wasn't able to sustain it, but you saw Nick Saban really in 2011, not 2009, really 2011, when they beat LSU in New Orleans. You kind of got the sense that, okay, this is kind of scary. And I think when you see how they operated moving forward, building this team, we can talk about the $22 million, and so many teams are going to spend so much money because of Ohio State this year.
Yep.
But it's the exposure that winning the first 12-team playoff with a $22 million payroll, a lot of players are going to look at that. A lot of coaches are going to look at that and be like, yeah, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do. Al Golden's probably going to get another job probably tomorrow. Upward mobility is a big thing. Nick Saban was very happy when he churned through coordinators every single year. All of that's going to happen to Ohio State. And there are some programs who can't handle that. There are some coaches who can't handle that. But Ryan Day seems like he's ready for it. You learn from your mistakes, right? All of us do. He was not successful earlier in playoffs, almost went to a national championship here with the win over Georgia, with the last second loss. You learn from those. Ryan Day, to his credit, did. And with a program like Ohio State, with that backing, I don't know if there's any slowing them down anytime soon.
Is there, look, Ohio State fans aren't going to want to hear this, but just from a macro standpoint, this is the first time we've seen the playoff look like this. There was criticism of, okay, Ohio State, they're now national champions. They didn't play in their conference title game because they lost their rivalry game. They get in and they end up having an easier path than some of the higher seeds. Did this work the way that the powers that be wanted it to?
Yes, because you got Notre Dame and Ohio State in the national championship game. I mean, so. you can't even script a better ending for the powers that be because of all the money that's involved, right? Notre Dame's a global program. They're the number one program in terms of exposure by far. Ohio State's up there 2 or 3, depending on the season. Usually it's either Michigan or Ohio State in terms of overall clicks, overall attention. So the fact that these two were kind of underdogs, but also massive draws was enormous for the committee, for the playoff folks, for the sport as a whole. Me, I like the BCS. I was okay with the 14 playoff. I didn't necessarily like the 12-team playoff, but like a politician, I conceded the race. I lost. I'm here for the overall health of the sport. I will support the platform of the party. And this was about as good as it can get. This is about as good as it can get for the playoff.
You can stay up to date all year on college football by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today, and college football smothered and covered on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You're Locked On Sports Today. Coming up, the Buckeyes proved they are the best team in college football on Monday. Before we get to that, the orchestrator of the Lions offense is moving to a division rival. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement for the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. The AFC Championship, Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen. Allen got the best of this matchup during the regular season, but FanDuel has opened the line in favor of Mahomes. What else is new? The Chiefs, 1.5 point edge over the Bills right now, which means our friends at FanDuel see this one as essentially a coin flip with the Chiefs getting home field advantage. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. The Detroit Lions are going to miss Ben Johnson, but as Locked On Lions host Matt Derry discusses, why on earth did he choose Chicago?
But the Chicago Bears are hiring Ben Johnson to be their head coach. He is going to work with Caleb Williams. He is going to stay in the NFC North. Look, you guys know how I feel about the Bears. I've been talking about the Bears on this show for years. I think the Bears are a joke. Ask Mark Trestman how it's going to go. Ask Matt Nagy how it will go. Ask Matt Eberflus how it will go. Ask John Fox how it will go. The list goes on and on. The Bears hang banners for off seasons. Hey, we won the off season last year. We got Caleb. We got DJ Moore. We got Keenan Allen. We're ready. And what did they do this year? They crapped the bed. They were horrible. What, they won 4 games, 5 games? They suck. They suck every year. And then after the season, you've got their president, Kevin Warren, who's never done anything in football of meaning with personnel. Kevin Warren is bounced around from place to place for a reason. He's talking about, hey, maybe I'll dip my toe into some football here. Kevin Warren's a stadium builder. Kevin Warren helped the Big Ten expand. He doesn't know anything about running a football organization. Ryan Poles, the GM's like, wait a minute. Am I making draft picks? Am I hiring the coach? Or is it you, Kev? That's a mess there. The ownership there has always been bad. Outside of Lovie Smith, and Mike Ditka, tell me who's won with the Bears.
The Colts hired former Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo to lead Indy's defense.
Now, schematically and ability to adapt and move guys around and do creative things, Anarumo is beyond what Gus Bradley was doing, but it comes down to personnel. I mean, the Bengals lost several really important starting defenders over the last couple years. They lost Jesse Bates, one of the top free safeties in the NFL. Chidobe Awuzie, DJ Reader, Eli Apple, Von Bell left and came back. So a lot of this guy's most important pieces, communicators, leaders on that defense, they were shown the door. I mean, the offense had a ton of money funneled into it, but there is gray area as to why, statistically it didn't always look pretty. But this is a guy who holds guys accountable, which is one of the biggest things you want to see here. He's a leader. You said the mad scientist moniker, that's from his players. That's the players always felt like this guy had an effective creative game plan for them going into each week.
On the hardwood, the Warriors couldn't hit the water if they fell out of the boat in the bay on Monday night and lost by 40 to the Celtics.
Biggest culprit of that was probably Curry forcing up things, because look at who else is around him on the floor. They weren't hitting their shots either. There was a point where the Warriors were missing every way possible. Peyton missed a layup. Wiggins missed a layup. Looney missed an uncontested layup. 3 uncontested layups in the first 6 minutes of the game. Steph Curry begins the game 1 for 3. They mentioned a lot of those were rushed. A lot of them were tough shots, but there were clean looks from Lindy, Wiggins, Dennis, Buddy, Moody. They all missed open ones to start, and there were a lot of misses. The Warriors started 1 of 14 from 3-point range. To make matters worse, the right thumb was bothering Steph Curry. You could see him on the broadcast playing with that thing, wincing a little bit. Clearly, it's somewhat of an issue. Will it force him to miss time? The game before, we thought he may miss time due to that toe. So, I mean, it's just always something different for a 36-year-old. That is life.
The Ohio State Buckeyes have been the best team in college football since losing to Michigan in the final week of the regular season. They cemented their top spot with a dominant win over the Notre Dame Fighting Irish on Monday. Locked On Buckeyes host Jay Stevens is, as you can imagine, ecstatic.
I'm interested. I'm glad you actually talked about the situation where Oregon wasn't better in certain situations. Arizona State came back, because in this game tonight, Notre Dame fought back. They kept fighting. And we all knew that at some point, Notre Dame might find a way to claw back. Ohio State allowed them to. Ohio State made some mistakes on defense. There were some issues offensively where they weren't scoring as consistently as you would like to later in the game. And they still had enough at the end of the day to get the job done. We saw it against Texas, where we talked about it last week, guys. They had numerous drives where they made boneheaded decision after boneheaded decision. It seemed like tonight, IGB went back to the old IGB, where he's just holding and he has stickum on his hands and he's attached to the closest jersey, which is a Notre Dame guy. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, what are you doing? The one thing you don't want to do is get a penalty, a holding penalty or pass interference. Yeah. You let them stay in the game. But Ohio State still had a gear that Notre Dame didn't stop. The fact that Jeremiah Smith only had 1 catch in the second half and Ohio State won.
Pretty big catch.
Oh,
I was going to say, wait.
Huge catch.
The fact that Jeremiah Smith only had the biggest catch in I'll say biggest reception in Ohio State football history. You're right. Maybe outside of the wide receiver throwback against Alabama. That's probably the biggest touchdown ever.
I'm saving that for later, because I got a comment about that very throw, Jeff. But Ohio State had a gear that when Texas couldn't
Ohio State was
Notre Dame couldn't get past it.
Ohio State was better.
Tweeted it out. Ohio State was better, but Ohio State's gear that they had this year is what Oregon's trying to get next year. It's what Texas is trying to get. These top teams are trying to get the gear that Ohio State has that no one else has, and it showed up tonight.
And let me give credit to Ohio State, and this is what that gear was, and it's not more complicated than this. They had a bunch of guys that stayed. That's it.
Yes.
If Oregon or Texas or whoever, all their players stay for a 4th year, they're going to look exactly the same. That was what the gear was. The gear was when Jack Sawyer and JTT and all these guys decided to stay. That's the gear. It's physicality, it's mental toughness, it's being through what they've been through. This game tonight could not happen without the Georgia game a couple years ago. Like none of this could happen. These guys have been drugged through it. And I mean, at some point, I know we're going to get to the Will Howard discussion, how he played. And I really believe played one of the great college football championship games of all time, as far as decision-making. And I mean, the throw, I mean, it's the confidence of the coach, the play calling. I mean, I don't even know where to start. Chip Kelly, I thought called a really good game. I know he got tight towards the end, but when it was time to call it, it was called and it was, executed. And I mean, let's be fair about this Ohio State team. They scored on almost every drive they had. You can't really play.
They punted once.
You can't really play offense much better than they did. There's one fumble. And
if they don't fumble, they're going to score again.
If Puka doesn't fumble, that's not even a conversation. But he did, and thank goodness for that kid who put his heart and soul into this team. We love him. So many of these guys are, everybody can laugh or whatever, but I'm the Ohio guy. These guys are legendary, like Buckeyes, in our heart forever, stamped. This is a really special team. What's funny is the 14 team was the youngsters. That was a sophomore team. That was a sophomore-driven team. Came out of nowhere, had all this talent, had the greatest.
Thanks. That makes me feel great.
One of the biggest.
I didn't know that. I could have gone my entire life and died not knowing that. It would have been fine.
Was that 42-20?
Zeke
that was 42-20. The game was closer than that, but yeah.
All the guys came back were just juniors, and then they left and had that draft class that set the record for draft class and all that. This team was the opposite. These are a bunch of guys who we were disappointed in. Here's the thing about this team. They don't have a Big Ten championship, and they don't have a Michigan victory, and they've got the greatest national championship on record. It's the weirdest thing that has ever happened. I mean, I told Jay before the show, Spencer, Ohio State basically wiped out 4 years of what we're going to just say disappointment.
You can stay up to date all year on the Ohio State Buckeyes by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Buckeyes on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Caleb Williams has his mentor, or at least that's what the Bears hope. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy. I can't wait for the first time to take my kids to a game. The energy, the excitement, they'll never forget it. I'll never forget taking them. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more near you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. The Chicago Bears did the thing that seemingly every team that had a coaching vacancy this cycle wanted to do. They hired Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, wasting absolutely no time after the Lions unceremoniously exited the postseason. Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears joins me now. And Lauren, I'm not even going to be snarky about this, but you in your short after this news was announced, you were like, the Bears did the right thing. They did the smart thing. And that does not always happen.
Yeah, there's such a peace of mind that comes with no guarantee this pick works out, but at least it's like the consensus right thing to do. That if the Bears are wrong about Ben Johnson, so is everybody else who thinks Ben Johnson was going to be a good hire, whether it was with the Raiders or the Jaguars and other teams wanted him. Like, the Bears got the guy everybody wanted, and that hasn't happened a lot in my lifetime.
It hasn't. The first question, maybe the only question that matters, is the fit with Caleb Williams. What do you think of the fit? How will Ben Johnson have to change? How will Caleb Williams have to change? This is probably something you're going to have to talk about 600 times between now and the start of the season. But what is your just sort of blink test thought at this point about what needs to change between these two?
Yeah, that'll be the ultimate measure of how great of an offensive coach Ben Johnson is, right? Jared Goff and Caleb Williams are two very different styles of quarterback.
Maybe could not be more different.
Yeah. So you can't just take the Detroit Lions offense and set that on Caleb Williams and say, hey, be a quick rhythm, 3-step drop passer and get rid of the ball in under 2.5 seconds every single time you let go of the ball. So Ben Johnson's going to need to adapt his offense and his system to the players, not just Caleb Williams, but all the personnel in Chicago. That's going to be a little different than what he had in Detroit. But at the same time, Caleb Williams also needs to keep getting better as a quarterback and speed up his delivery and get through progressions a little bit quicker and be a little bit more towards that style of quarterback. But I still think coach needs to adjust to players more than players should have to adjust to coach.
Okay, well, the other part of this, and I think if you listen to Bears fans, talk to Bears fans, which I do sometimes involuntarily on social media. They will tell you about the offensive line. Also, very, very different from the one that the Detroit Lions had last year. Should we just pencil in offensive linemen like in the draft the first 3 rounds this year, or what's the plan here?
Certainly, everyone's already drawn the lines between free agent Lions right guard Kevin Zeitler and the Chicago Bears. So there's a start there. But yeah, the Bears have only a couple of offensive linemen even under contract for next year. There's like 3 or 4 of them, and that was only about 2 starters from this year. So that position was going to get an overhaul either way. But I think the emphasis goes a little bit higher when Johnson's used to having an experienced veteran quality group there, and the Bears haven't had that in maybe my lifetime.
The early reporting, the Bears. I'm used to the Packers part of this. Freudian slip. Bears fans are going to kill me for that one. The coaching staff is going to be important. Dan Campbell put together an all-star coaching staff that Ben Johnson was on. Early reporting has Dennis Allen as one of those coaches. Does that make sense to you? And are there other names that you think could make sense with Ben Johnson?
Yeah, that's one of the things Ryan Poles actually talked about in the post-season press conference. Like, okay, if you're hiring a first-time head coach, what he said is like, who's going to help you find your blind spots? You've never done this before. Can you get experienced coordinators who have head coaching experience on your staff to help guide you and mentor you and point out the things that maybe you just don't know what you don't know at this stage of the process. So I think that was also an important piece for the Bears to have some peace of mind that, yeah, Ben Johnson's doing it for the first time, but if Allen can be here and be a guy who's been through this on multiple teams before and just be a sounding board for him, I think there's a lot of stability that comes from that as opposed to another defensive coordinator who might be great, but doesn't have that head coaching experience.
Yeah, not that those stints have gone great for Dennis Allen, but he's done it. And let's be honest, he's a really good defensive coach. So pairing him with Ben Johnson, just from that standpoint, seems to make a lot of sense. Like the number one thing, if you're an offensive head coach, is you have to get the defensive coordinator right. Speaking of the Packers, like Matt LaFleur struggled with that early in his tenure, and that stuff matters.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about Dennis Allen, like being in this sweet spot where, because he's failed as a head coach now twice, I don't know that there's going to be an eagerness for another team to hire him right away. Even if the Bears defense is good in year one, is Dennis Allen going to jump back into head coaching searches, or is he going to need a few years of coaching again before maybe his name gets back up in the list? So you don't have that fear right away of like, oh, if you hire a great defensive coordinator, you're going to lose him after 1 year and have to keep replacing him. Maybe Allen can do some career PR rehabilitation in Chicago for a few years before we start to enter that conversation.
And maybe not at all. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City, I mean, that defense has been great for years. And I think people are just so turned off by how it went the first couple times that they're just like, man, he's just going to be a DC forever then, I guess.
And that's the dream for Chicago. It's the sort of the reverse here of hire a non-offensive coach and lose your offensive coordinator. It all feels too good to be true for the Bears right now. And we're looking around wondering what's going to go wrong.
Well, we have seen them win the offseason many times, Lauren, in the past. So there is, I think, that hesitation. If you're going to be a little glass half full here, that would probably be it, right?
Yeah, it's all we can do is hold on to hope. You have the quarterback and you have what you think is the coach. We haven't had both of those things at the same time here in a long time.
Maybe ever.
Ever.
You can stay up to date all year on the Chicago Bears by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Bears on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. If you thought Dan Campbell was going to turn away from what is ahead, no. If you thought Dan Campbell was going to run away from what is ahead, you've not been paying attention. Ben Johnson out, Aaron Glenn likely on his way out, and this team will need to be remade moving forward. The Lions head coach spoke with reporters on Monday. He said, we're going to come back stronger. We're going to learn from this, and it's just more fuel on the fire. An offseason of upheaval, and Campbell's resolve remains strong. How can you say he won't do it? But then again, seems like a long shot to replace 2 future head coaches with 2 more guys just as good. If you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports today, are the Golden State Warriors in crisis mode already? And we get you set for the Final Four in the NFL. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.